Hello and thank you for watching this video from us here at Sustainable Aylesbury, where today we're going to be talking about going car free. So it's with a great pleasure that I introduce my guest for today. Catherine, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Bruce.
Hello, great to have you with us, and really appreciate your time and being part of this project that we're embarking on today. I guess I should start by also saying who I am as well, because people won't necessarily be familiar with me. So I'm Bruce. I'm one of the founding members of Sustainable Aylesbury. And Catherine, I guess, who are you? Could you tell me a bit about yourself, please?
Okay, I'm Catherine. I've lived in Aylesbury for just over 20 years now. And yeah, I don't know how much you want to know.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So 20 years is obviously a long time to be in Aylesbury. Where were you before? What was it that brought you to Aylesbury in the first place?
We lived in Scotland, on the
Okay.
east coast of Scotland, and I got a job in Aylesbury. So it was a bit of a long move. Our families were in England, so we were sort of halfway between two sets of families down here. And we had a small child, a 1-year-old, and I was able to earn a little bit more, and it meant that my husband could stay at home,
Which is
with our
always
son.
good.
And it's linked in with the going car free, because our jobs in Scotland, we worked about 25, 30 miles away from where we lived, and we were on this treadmill, getting up early, packing everything up, driving 30 miles, putting this child in the nursery, going to work, doing it all reverse, coming home, having tea, bedtime, and had this bit of a treadmill life up there.
Fully understand that. Been there myself, living here in Aylesbury up until lockdown to some extent. We'll come on to that in a minute. That's really cool. We've known each other for ages now, like years, quite a few years.
Yeah.
So I've been aware of your car freeness, and as a family currently with 2 cars, but looking to go down to 0 cars over time. I'm really interested to hear your story and kind of how it came to be. How much of it was kind of deliberate and that kind of thing. So before we kind of dig into the sort of focus on cars, so it's really good to hear sort of how you came to Aylesbury. So what was it? What's your sort of line of work? What was it that brought you here work-wise?
My current job role, it's not the same job that I had when I first came, but it's a business intelligence officer. So management information analyst I came to do in financial services initially.
Okay, and how far was work from home there back in those days?
It was when we first moved, we were renting on the edge of Aylesbury, and it was about, I'm going to say it because I walked it, it was about 20-minute walk. And then we moved, and I think if I lean out of my bedroom window, I could see the office I worked in then, just about.
Okay,
so
that's cool. That's
less than
super
5-minute
close.
walk.
That's living the dream right there. No cars, no mucking about with roadworks and what have you. That's perfect. So would you say that sort of the move to Aylesbury, a big part of it was the appeal of work-life balance?
Probably, maybe without articulating that, but we weren't really looking to move. I just happened to see this job advertised.
Okay.
And I thought, that looks like something I could do. It's a bit more money than I'm earning now. Obviously, that time the house prices were more expensive than in Scotland, but not as much as they are now. So we knew we'd probably have a smaller place to live. But yeah, we were on like this treadmill of so it wasn't like a conscious, oh, we've got to do something. I just happened to see this job and oh yeah, I could do that, I'll try that. Was invited for an interview, which in itself was involved driving an aeroplane and a taxi ride. It was, by the time I got down here for the interview, I wasn't nervous about the interview at all because I'd had such a complicated journey. So yeah.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Completely understand the treadmill piece. So, once you kind of got the job and obviously moved here, how did it kind of compare with what you were used to? Aylesbury as the town.
At first, we lived in Dundee in Scotland, and everybody's really, really friendly, and everyone talks to you in shops. And I found it quite different in Aylesbury at first. Much more, people are much more reserved. Now we've been here years and years and years. I know people and I recognise people in shops and they recognise me. But at first that was quite different. We didn't know anybody, only the people that I was working with at first. So at first it was a bit strange, but over time you get to know people. And my husband and son were going to toddler groups and they got to know people, and we started coming to local church and got to know people. So it's just at first it was a big contrast, community wise, I suppose.
I'm from High Wycombe originally, which is just down the road relatively, and I know what you mean about sort of approachability of people and the community focus. Was Aylesbury sort of much bigger? Was it just the sort of general culture and vibe, I guess?
It was. I mean, Dundee's a city, so that was, much bigger.
Yeah.
But almost like that. That stereotypical outgoing northerners compared with reserved southerners, just making generalizations, but that's what it felt like.
That makes sense. So obviously you're living in Aylesbury right now without a car. You're not in the job that you sort of started off in 20 years ago. How did that kind of come to be? How did that transition kind of happen? Was it sort of planned? Did it just kind of organically happen?
Not having a car?
Yeah.
So we've always been very conscious of environmental issues and tried to do our best with what we had. But at one point we had 2 cars when we lived in Scotland, so we did all of that for convenience point of view. But we got to a stage I think it was about just over 10 years ago. I was working in London, so I'm within walking distance of the railway station. My husband was working in a school that he walked to. Our son was at school that he walked to. And it came to that time of year of your car insurance and the car MOT, and the car needed a lot of work. And we had to think and thought, actually, the car sits in the street for probably 13 days out of every 14. At a weekend, we might go off somewhere to a walk, drive somewhere and go for a walk. And Andy did a load of calculations and worked out how much it costs to have a car sitting in a street, because there's costs initially, and researched how much, if say we wanted to go on a longer holiday that we'd have to drive, how much it would cost to hire a car, and worked out that actually if we didn't have a car and we could hire a car for 3 or 4 weeks a year, and it wouldn't cost any more than we were paying for this car that just sat there when we might need it. So we didn't get the car mended. We drove it to ASM, put it on the weighbridge and took the money. And
fair enough.
So it wasn't, it's tied in with our lifestyle at the time, because of the part of town we live in and the good public transport links relatively. We thought we'd give it a go.
And how long ago was that?
That was in 2010.
It's 2010. Okay, cool. So what are we, 2021 now? So that's
Yeah.
11 years. That's pretty good going. So I imagine a number of people are now in a kind of similar position, what with coronavirus and whatnot. I mean, speaking for myself, I've always worked in IT and tech and have been able to kind of remote work, but have had an office, and there's been some pressure to go to the office. And at the moment I work in Maidenhead, which is like 25 miles each way, and there's no way to get there on public transport. So up until March, when there was any element of going to the office, I've had to have a car. Now I'm looking at my car sat outside the front of my house thinking, wonder how much that thing is worth, and we're hopefully going to be going down a very similar path. But one of the things that's kind of holding us back is what about X, what about Y, things like family holidays, trips to see family, that kind of thing. How have you found that kind of stuff?
So, I mean, like I said, Andy did lots of calculations, and some public transport isn't always the cheapest option. So you could do lots of research on different rail cards you can buy and booking your train tickets ahead. So we have been to visit family by train in the past. We've been on holiday by train, but we've also hired a car for 10 days or at a time to go down. So if we were going down to Cornwall. So it's, Bruce, you know me, I am not a spontaneous person, so things get planned ahead. So with a bit of planning ahead and a bit of research, you can go get around those things. Even if we were going for a day to see Andy's family, were slightly nearer than mine, so we'd probably do that in a day. You could hire a car for a weekend or even for a day, and for 24 hours. And because that journey wasn't as straightforward by public transport.
Yes, not all possible by public transport.
But we didn't have a very small child. I know your circumstances are a bit different. Our small child was a teenager by the time we didn't have a car. So they seem to, as they get older, the less luggage the small people have.
Has to be said. At the moment, with a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old, there is a lot of luggage. We spent, at the moment, we have an estate car with a roof box, and whenever we go anywhere, it is completely full, including the roof box and beneath your feet and everything. And there are some places that are just not. You can, like Reading is a good example, which is where our sort of extended family live. It's not that far in miles, but to get there on public transport is actually quite difficult. It's either into London, around London and back out on the train, or a bus to Wickham, then a bus to Reading. We've done it before. Is it a fun trip? No, it's not a fun trip. So I don't think...
If you were doing it and then maybe staying for a week or a fortnight, it might be a fun trip. Sometimes, a longer journey, the travel's part of the holiday. Yes, but it's not necessarily. I mean, we were talking about it because I was going, well, what shall I say? What shall I say? And I almost have like a weird geography of what places are near and what aren't, because they're on a good bus route. And there are places that are actually really near. And I think, oh, that's really difficult to get to. When if you had a car, it might be 15 minutes away. But because it's not on a direct train or bus route, it feels really difficult.
Yeah. Fully understand that. Yeah, it makes sense. Interesting. So have there ever been any times, or a single time you can think of, where you think, oh, if only we had a car, we could have done X?
Probably in like emergency time. So a few years ago, my mum had a kidney stone and was rushed into hospital, and I could go and see her the next day. I could book a train that night, and I got an advance ticket, so I could go the next day. But probably if there'd been a car in the street, I'd have jumped in the car and driven there.
Yeah.
So, although I might not have been in a fit state to drive because I'd have been too worried. So, so it's probably things like that.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, in this last year, because the advice is not to use public transport, we've been very much confined to Aylesbury, whereas we like walking, and we'll do something in normal times. We'd get the train to Wendover and walk to Princess Risborough and get a train home, or we'd get a bus, go on a bus to Haddenham or somewhere and walk there and come home. So the horizons have gone to where we can, or where I don't bike as far as Andy, where I can reach on a bike or where I can walk to, which is fine. It's not a problem, but at some points it's felt I've not been further than 3 miles from my house.
Right. Well, I mean, car or no car, you know, coronavirus has done that to all of us in some regard. For those of you who don't know me, 2019, I think I went on 5 work trips abroad. You know, was driving to Maidenhead almost every day, Monday to Friday, and so this whole journey is relatively new for me as well. I completely believe it's the right thing to do for us, for the planet, and as a family. It's just difficult.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that for free. Cool. So as far as sort of friends and family are concerned, have you ever had any sort of comments from friends and family that or any sort of perception, insights as to how other people have perceived no-carness?
I think some family members, there was a time when they wanted to give us their car, and we didn't want to, to the extent it was almost rude as saying no. I'm conscious that we need the lifts, if we're if we've been out as a group, haven't we, for Christmas meals, maybe to a pub in a local village, and someone's always got to give us a lift at the moment. So I don't know that, I'm not conscious of everyone complaining about that behind their backs, but maybe they do.
Not in my experience.
So it's probably me being more conscious of it. But no, I don't think so. I mean, we've been fortunate as well. Some summers, my mum will drive over here and get a train to see her sister and leave us her car for a week or a fortnight, so we can maybe give some of the lifts back. Or Andy, usually that's his, I could go to the tip.
I go to the tip. It's funny.
And then we have to be really careful to make sure we clean out the car afterwards. So we're both on her, although she doesn't live nearby, we're both named drivers on her car insurance. So if we're with her, we've gone to hers in the train, we can use that car. But I'm not sure now if she'd do that again, drive over here. It's probably a bit of the limit of how far she'd be able to drive at the moment. But so I can't remember what the question was. Sorry.
It's okay.
About what do other people
Perception,
think?
Yeah, what do other people think, basically. Yeah. That makes sense. It's certainly been something that we've talked about here when we've been talking about just getting rid of all the cars and just seeing how it goes for a bit. Like you say, the lifts thing is one of the things that kind of came up. So as a general lifestyle, would you recommend it to someone like me who's thinking about ditching them and giving it a go?
Like I said, I don't know that it wasn't necessarily a conscious decision. It just worked because of where we lived, because of where we worked, and because of where our son went to school. That it sort of presented itself as this is it's silly having a car sitting in the street. Not, we haven't even got a drive or a garage, so it wasn't even near our house. It's around the corner. So so I don't want to say, oh, everything's marvelous, and I don't know how easy it would have been when our son was the age of your children.
Yeah. I think for us at the moment, it's like an aspiration, but not an aspiration. I think we can make reality right now. But what we can do is we have 2 cars. We definitely don't need the one that's just sat out the front. This year we've been experimenting with electric cars, because obviously that from an environmental perspective, in comparison with 2 dirty diesels, it's definitely the sort of way to go. We bought a 2011 Nissan Leaf just to sort of test the waters, and it's been really, really good. Obviously, the range is a problem with that particular car. We get, if I'm lucky, I'll get 60 miles range out of it, which is, worse than public transport.
Yeah.
So that's a factor, but it's worked as a sort of experiment. So we think in the short term, we're probably going to go with an electric estate, and 1 car. But we'll have to see, because longer term, that is the direction we want to go, just to not have the need for a car, and to sort of change our sort of lifestyle to make that work, which, today, as you say, with small children, maybe it will not do. That's really cool. So as thinking about Aylesbury, is there Aylesbury as good a place as any to be without a car, or a better or worse place than some?
I think that, again, we practice here to lots of supermarkets and things. So even when we had a car, our big shop, we didn't drive to the supermarket. We went and I didn't, but he went and carried bags of stuff. We have vegetables delivered, so that cuts down on the size of the shop.
Yeah.
So it's handy for walking like that. It's horrible for cycling round because the traffic. The buses were better when we didn't have a car, but I think the council have lowered their subsidies, so the bus services now on a Sunday are quite limited out into the countryside. There used to be a really brilliant bus to Milton Keynes that was an express bus that by the time you'd found somewhere to park in Milton Keynes, it took the same amount of time as driving. So I think doesn't seem to be a strategy at the Buckinghamshire Council level to get people out of their cars, because there are levers to pull.
Definitely.
So the trains are great, and the buses in some directions are pretty good. So on the whole, well, I guess if it was really awful, we would have bought a car again. So generally, and then it's pretty flat around Aylesbury, so that's always a plus.
Yeah.
But for walking and cycling.
So this is what's on my mind when I think about Aylesbury and sort of like getting around with that car. It is flat. It's sort of place that could, if we had some investment in cycle lanes, it would be the perfect place to cycle around, rather than High Wycombe, which was the opposite of that, because it's all on the side of a hill. So getting around by bicycle was it was doable, but it was damn hard work. Whereas Aylesbury, looking at the gemstone routes, the one that goes down the A413, which I'm on, could be really, really great. But as you say, there's the traffic and there's the fact it's sort of broken up by people's drives and things. My daughter's nursery was sort of like on the edge of Aylesbury, on the border of Wendover, and there was a time where I cycled her there in our cargo bike, and it was just a bit too much to do every day, partly because of the distance, but partly because of the lack of investment, essentially. But I think that there's really good sort of like possibility to make Aylesbury a really good place to be without car, because anything that's local, then great, bike is all kind of possible. So sort of taking a slight sort of departure from car free in Aylesbury, if you could change or see one thing change in Aylesbury in any regard at all, what would it be? Difficult question. Feel free to think about it.
I think it is about, people talk about, I'm going to talk about traffic. People talk about the terrible traffic in Aylesbury, and the solution seems to be to build more roads. But you look at the M25, that only increases the traffic.
Yeah.
So it's that change of, I mean, Andy was, last year he did this, it was like a puzzle, almost like a treasure hunt in London. And there were things to find. And we had to get from somewhere like Brixton to, I can't remember where it is, the Horniman Museum, which is in south East London. And we were, researching the Transport for London, and it said, oh, there's a bus. And I said, oh, we better check, because it was quite a long distance, that the bus isn't just every hour or something, and it was every 5 minutes. So why, if you knew that, I said I planned things ahead, because some of the buses are every hour or every 40 minutes. But if there was that driver to provide that option, nice wide paths for walking and cycling, more investment in public transport. You need both things. You need the carrot and the stick, don't you?
Yeah. And
then that would make it, there would be less cars, because the only ones, there's something like I think it's Manchester, that there's some horrendous percentage of journeys are less than 3 miles or less than a mile and a half or something. And that's probably the same in Aylesbury.
I can believe
Why
it.
do you need to go in a car for that distance?
Yeah, exactly true. Like exactly what you just said basically is my view as well. More cars, more road is not the answer to the traffic problems in Aylesbury. It's looking at alternatives, because it's not that big you can get on a bike from one end of Aylesbury to the other in 20 minutes, half an hour. It's not a big town. It's flat. It lends itself perfectly to other more sustainable methods of transport. I'm interested in the Zip scooters. I know they've been getting very mixed sort of publicity in this trial, but again, it's a more green way of getting around. It doesn't require cars. They have their pros, they have their cons, but it's a good thing to at least look at. For the same reasons. So it'd be interesting to see how things change. And as a group, Sustainable Aylesbury, we're looking to get involved in things like this, and like this is anything that you, the Aylesbury community, are kind of passionate about. We're looking to build this group and to become, a movement that can do things rather than just have nice, but that isn't possible without sort of a critical mass, and that's what we're really kind of hoping to achieve, to get enough people who are kind of passionate and care about this to actually want to take action themselves, from lobbying the council to actually getting hands-on with stuff. So all that's left to do is to say thank you very much, Catherine, for letting me interview you today. Really appreciate the time and the effort in being a part of what we're doing here at Sustainable Aylesbury. And just to say to anyone out there who's watching, I hope this was as interesting to you to watch as it was to me to record. It was really, really great, really interesting for me. This video, along with others in the future, will be at sustainableaylesbury.org.uk. And if you're interested in either in being a part of what we're doing here in any form, you can email us. We're on hello@sustainableaylesbury.org.uk, on Facebook, on facebook.com/sustainableaylesbury, and on Twitter @sustain_ales. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully see you again in the future.